Hi everyone, it's me, Spring, the fiber enthusiast, and welcome to the channel. Today's tutorial is going to be a Tunisian bandana style cowl. Now it's got a little bit of a collar to it depending on the length of the fabric you create. It is one piece of fabric sewn together at the ends. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and talk about what you need to do this cowl. Okay, so for this cowl, we'll need a few things. We'll need some yarn, and we'll talk about the yarn. This is Chloe. I got it on a Hobby Lobby reduced sale. It's Pine Forest, and is the colorway. And let's see here. It recommends a 5mm crochet hook, which is the case if we were going to be doing a regular crochet hook. But not the case because we're doing a Tunisian crochet hook. The content of the fiber is 70% wool and 30% viscose. This is 3.5 ounces or 100 grams, 270 yards or 247 meters. For this, I used almost the entire donut. And you could use the whole thing if you wanted to. That's entirely up to you. You'll need a tape measure to measure the length of the panel before we go and put it together. You'll also need a pair of scissors, a darning needle to sew it together and sew in your ends, and a number 7 Tunisian crochet hook. You could even go one step bigger in that hook if you so choose. So I'm going to set that aside and show you the length of the one that I have here already worked up and ready to sew together. So if we go from end to end without stretching it, I have 35 inches. And again, that's entirely up to you. You can go even longer. What I did was wrap this around my neck and placed it how I'm going to sew it together and seen way it sat, whether it was most comfortable, if it was going to be too tight. It could be made looser. It's, again, up to you. That just is my measurements. Let's go ahead and get started on how to do this stitch repeat. And then you can work on your stitch repeat for the length that you want it. I will also tell you a couple other options that you could do. You could make this 70 to 80 inches long and make it just a scarf. You also could very easily make this, again, very, very long, and sew the ends together and create an infinity scarf. That's also an option. I just personally prefer a bandana style cowl. That's just my preference. So that is how I decided to design this particular cowl, to match the same type of cowl that I like. But there's a couple other options for you if you would like to do so. So let's go ahead and get started with the stitch pattern. I recently released a stitch tutorial on part of this pattern. Now I altered it to give it a different look. And that's the front of it, and that's the back of it. Okay, so I'm going to move this out of the way, and we're going to start working the pattern itself together. All right, so once you have the yarn of choice, we're going to, and again, this is a lighter worsted, give or take. It could be considered a 3-weight. Let's see if I can figure out what they consider it. They do consider it a worsted weight. It is a very thin worsted weight. So you would need something comparable to that. And again, a 7mm hook. We're going to chain a total of 35. And for the first row, we're going to do a Tunisian simple stitch and a Tunisian back pass. So that's our setup row to get started. So chain 35, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on until you have 35 stitches. So once you have your 35 stitches, we're going to turn our chain over so we're looking at the spine of that chain, the back bumps of your chain. And we're going to go through and we're going to pick up every stitch along the way. So this loop counts as your first one. By the time you get to the end, you should have a total of 35 loops on your hook. So it'll be the same number of chains you chained, you will have loops on your hook. And I'm just going underneath that back bump there, yarning over and pulling up a loop. Go to the next one, and we're just going to continue that all the way to the very end. So once you've reached the end, again, you should have 35 loops on your hook, 35 stitches. Now we're going to do a standard Tunisian back pass, and that will complete our setup row. Then we will begin our pattern repeat rows. So here we are. We're going to chain 1, so yarn over and pull up a loop. What that does is brings us up to the next row of stitches. So now we're going to yarn over and go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, and you're going to continue that repeat until the end of the row. And you have exhausted all but one stitch left on your hook. Once you've made it to the end and you have one loop left on your hook, we are now ready to begin our pattern repeat rows. For the first repeating row, we're going to bring our yarn to the front and we're going to go to our very next stitch. So not this very first vertical bar, but the very next vertical bar. And we're going to insert our hook under that bar. We're going to bring our yarn around our hook from the back side of our hook and pull through that stitch, creating a new stitch. We now have 2 loops on our hook. Next, we're going to do a Tunisian 3 together, but we're not going to lose any stitches. So insert your hook under all 3 of those stitches. Yarn over and pull up a loop. So again, if we stop there, that would be a Tunisian 3 together. But we don't want to do a 3 together and lose the amount of stitches. So we're going to yarn over and insert our hook back under all 3 of those stitches. Yarn over and pull up a loop. So when we did the 3 together, that was our first stitch. Yarn over was our second stitch, and then the last stitch is the one that we just pulled through. Now we're going to repeat that. Bring the yarn to the front, find your next vertical bar, go into the next vertical bar, yarn around the back of your hook, and pull through. And now we're going to do that 3 together and create 2, make 2. So insert your hook underneath the next 3 vertical bars, yarn over, pull up a loop. That's your first stitch. Yarn over is your second stitch, and go back under all 3 of those stitches, yarn over, pull up a loop for your third stitch. That is your repeat to the end of the row, to the last 2 stitches. When we come to the last 2 stitches, I will show you what to do. All right, I've arrived at my last 2 stitches, our salvage edge and 1 stitch before it. We're going to purl that second to last stitch as if we were going to continue a whole new repeat. And then we're going to turn our last stitch on its edge, pick up both legs of that stitch so we have a nice edge along the side, yarn over and pull up a loop. That completes that pass. Now to complete the row, we're going to do a standard Tunisian back pass. Yarn over, chain 1 to start our new row. Yarn over, go through 2. Yarn over, go through 2. Just the same as a standard Tunisian back pass. Continue that till you have exhausted all but one loop on your hook. When you've reached the end, you should have something that looks like this. Okay, that is the end of your first of 2-row repeat. Now we're going to do the second row repeat. We're going to skip over this very first vertical bar. We're going to find our next stitch and Tunisian purl it. So bringing the yarn to the front, go around the hook and up. And we're going to Tunisian simple stitch the next 3 stitches. So 1, and the second one is a little bit further back than the first one because it is a yarn over. So here we are. Let's get it. And then the next one. So your repeat is to Tunisian purl and Tunisian simple stitch the next 3. Tunisian purl and Tunisian simple stitch the next 3. And you're going to continue that repeat all the way to the end, at which point every single row you should have 35 stitches every time. So if you want to keep up with your stitches, that is the stitch count you will continue to have all the way through the entire pattern. Once again, when you've reached the end, you're down here at the last 2 stitches. You will Tunisian purl the second to last stitch and turn that work on its side and pick up both legs of that very last stitch and Tunisian simple stitch it. Then you're going to do a Tunisian back pass, a standard Tunisian back pass. Yarn over and chain 1, yarn over and go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, and continue to the end of the row. When you've reached the end of the row, you have completed your second repeating row. You at this point will go back and start your repeats. Repeat 1 and repeat 2. I will have a timestamp down in the description box as to your repeat rows when they start. Okay, after you have completed the second row repeat, this is what you should have. This is what it should be looking like. Okay, I'm going to move this out of the way and bring back the original panel so you can see once you have worked up quite a bit of fabric, what it should look like. So the stitch tutorial was showing you how to do these 3 together and keep the same amount of stitches. And the added part is your purl stitch. So that creates these ridges through your fabric. It's a fun stitch to do. And that's a lot for me when I'm talking about Tunisian, because I'm not the biggest fan of Tunisian. But those of you that have been around for a while know that. Okay, so once you have made it down to the 35 inches of fabric or longer, depending on how you decided to do this. If you're following along with me, I'm at 35 inches. I am now going to do a bind off, closing this last row up. So we're going to Tunisian simple stitch and Tunisian purl stitch. So my next stitch is a Tunisian purl stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and purl that stitch. And then I'm going to slip stitch. The next three are Tunisian simple stitch. So we're going to Tunisian simple stitch and slip. Tunisian simple stitch and slip. Tunisian simple stitch and slip. You'll have to excuse me dropping my stitches all the time. These hooks are very shallow and drop off the edge if your stitches are relaxed and not super tight, which is definitely the way to go with Tunisian. And again, we're going to finish the next stitch is a purl and slip. Tunisian simple and slip, Tunisian simple and slip, Tunisian simple and slip. Right off the end of the hook. So that will fill in the very end of your row here. Now what we're going to do once we get to the other end is seam it together. So go ahead and continue binding off the end of your fabric, and we will come back together and sew it up together. All right, so once you have completed your bind off, you're now down at the end of the row here. You're going to want a really long tail, maybe 18 to 24 inches long. Cut away from your ball of yarn and lace up your darning needle. Now I'm going to pull through that very last loop, this tail, just to kind of end it completely. Now for the setup of how to sew this together. If you are doing the cowl and following along with me, we're going to wrong side up, have it laying horizontally in front of us. You're going to bring one end all the way around so that way it's coming down towards you. You're going to bring the other end and we're placing it on the side of the fabric. So instead of crossing over, we're just coming to the side of the fabric here, just to the side. And now what we're going to do is we're going to, and I'll zoom in so that way you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to come over here to the very starting point, and I'm going to pick up a stitch and bring my needle through. Just let's get these connected here. Now I'm going to be working over the top of these stitches. So what I mean by that is I'm going to come over the top of the stitch. I'm not going to go under the stitch. I'm going to go over it and come through the other side and pick up the top part of the stitch on the opposite side. So you can see I'm only picking up one leg of each stitch, the top leg of the stitch. I'm going to pull that tail through. And you do not want this to be any tighter than the stitches you're already working. So now we're going to go to the next one and go over the top of the stitch, under the first leg, go across to the other side and pick up from underneath, pick up the leg on the opposite side. And you're going to continue to do this all the way up your fabric, connecting the two together. So you just find your next available stitch and pick up those legs that are closest to you. Once you've come to your last stitch, your last and final stitch, you're going to go through both legs of the stitch and both legs of the opposite side, just to give it a little bit more security, more durability. And then you're going to weave in your tail. I'm going to go into where it goes to the back of the fabric and turn my fabric inside out and weave in my tail. Now, you can take this cowl one step further and crochet a single crochet all the way around if you choose. But I think that it looks absolutely stunning the way that it is, because the way Tunisian in the edge stitches are picked up, it gives it a single crocheted look on the edge all the way. All the way around. So that is how to make this bandana style cowl, Tunisian. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. And if you make this, I would love to see it. You can share it in the Facebook group. You could also share it and tag me in it on Instagram. You can also email me a picture. Be blessed. Be a blessing, and until next time, bye for now.